Sean Dustin spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. Upon release in 2006, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and legal paperwork. In 2010, he kicked a long-time methamphetamine habit and started the long climb back up the ladder of life. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. If you want transparency and authenticity, you're in the right place. This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and this is Sean Dustin.
This is the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Hopefully that this choppiness, man, goes away. I switched my internet, and I thought that it fixed the situation, and apparently it didn't, because sometimes it still does that shakiness there. So if you enjoy the streaming platform that I'm using, it's called StreamYard. You can hit that affiliate link down in the description, which I have right in front of you, and you'll get $10 off your first paid subscription, which is $25 is the minimum amount. And I'll get a credit too as well, and that helps support the show. If you're on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, thumbs the video up. On Facebook, do me a favor also and like and share this. Podcast platforms, which this will be uploading in the next few days. Subscribe, please. That definitely helps to boost my noticeability or visibility on the platforms themselves. So that it's always a help. Happy Friday. If you guys hope you had a good week, and I hope you have a great weekend. My guest tonight is Robert Grimshaw. And if you read the description, Robert had a tough life growing up. From the time he was 3 till he was 13, he dealt with physical and mental abuse from his stepmother. And oftentimes he referred to that as the worst 10 years of his life. And so we're going to see that, and we're going to talk to Robert here in just a second. He's going to tell us about his life and what he went through. What's up, Robert?
Hey, Sean, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing your evening with me. You are on the whereabouts are you located?
Northwest of Columbus, about an hour northwest. In Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. One of my business partners is she lives in Ohio as well, so it's good.
Yeah.
So your wife actually reached out to me. We're on Clubhouse. It seems like everybody's on Clubhouse these days. That's all the rage for the iPhone people. And it's actually a great place to make an organic connection with folks. If you're content creators, or if you have a coaching service, or, any of these things, Clubhouse is actually the spot right now. So if you can get there, I suggest it. There's good stuff going on there. So she reached out to me, and she thought it would be, helpful for you, and also a great way for you to help share your story. And that's what we're going to do.
Right.
So why don't you go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself, how you grew up, what you went through, and this is just going to be a regular organic conversation. And I'll ask questions and stop you as I have them.
Gotcha. Yeah. Man, I don't know where to begin. So I'm 34. I'll be 34 in May, rather. Grew up in Columbus. Mom and dad divorced when I was 3. Obviously, I don't remember a lot of that. There's not a whole lot of memories because they ended up just hating each other. So there was never any pictures or any talk of any of the time before that. But he met my stepmother Obviously, I don't remember a lot of that. There's not a whole lot of memories.
Oh. No,
Sorry.
go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yeah, but he met my stepmother when I was about 3, and then my memory started to develop about 4 whenever she really started, I guess, resenting me. I don't know her. She brought a daughter that was a year older into the relationship with my dad, and he ended up adopting her. So I don't know if she had some resentment against me because I wasn't her child, or because I think she hated my mom more than anything, and she was abused. That cycle that we talked about. I think it started with her. I guess her brothers abused her and raped her and things like that. And yeah, just said from 3 to about 13, just physical, mental. I think the mental abuse was worse than the physical. She was really good about physically abusing, hitting, pulling hair, spitting in my face, things like that. Things that wouldn't leave a mark where she couldn't get in any trouble.
Mm.
And then, when you're 3 and 4 years old and that starts, it becomes the normal, you know. So people, as I got older, say, "Well, you didn't ever tell your dad. You never told anybody." Well, I didn't know it was wrong to tell anybody. When
Yeah,
someone holds
yeah.
you down and beats the hell out of you, and like I said, spits in your mouth or spits in your face, or things like that. Uh, I hate it's not. It was normal, you know. But it yeah, I don't know. It
So
started
is
when I
this
was 4. Go ahead.
Yeah, so is this like like a daily thing? You would come, obviously before you went to school, but
Oh yeah,
when you went to school, I mean, was that like your only relief?
that was it. I remember the last year I spent there. Like if there was a snow day or if there was a holiday, I hated it. I hated being home. I was the only kid who showed up every day for school. I couldn't wait. It was to the point where I'd get up at 4:30 in the morning and I would clean the house. It's like the Cinderella classic. And it doesn't sound bad to me now, and maybe not to some people, but the mental strain it has on you as an adult, I think, is far worse than it is as a kid. But, you get up at 4 in the morning, um, and clean the house, and then I would just sit Indian style in the middle of my floor. And again, it doesn't sound bad, but when you just sit for hours, and then you go to school, and then you come back. Summer times were terrible too, but uh, you come home, do your homework, and you sit. She would feed me the bare minimum. I hate to say it, but I ended up doing a little bit of time later on in life, and because of all that, it made it so much easier to get through the time. I hate to say that, um, but yeah, I got to where summer times, man. I never. I tell people that I was locked in that bedroom 24 hours a day. My dad would work. That's all he did was work. So people would ask me, "You never told your dad?" I'm like, "Well, he didn't care." It's not that he didn't know. He didn't care to know. He didn't want to know. But yeah, just I started later on, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old, I would start to talk to myself and have full conversations with myself because I didn't have any, as you can imagine at school, I was awkward. I was an awkward kid, but,
Yeah.
I started to think I had an imaginary friend. I mean, she beat the hell out of me for that, made a big deal about it, humiliated me that I had an imaginary friend at 8 years old. Well, I didn't know I was just talking to myself. I think that's like a human reaction, to talk to yourself if you haven't talked to anybody in however many days or weeks. But
And
yeah,
you were an only child?
I wasn't. No, yeah. So she brought my older sister into the relationship. My dad adopted her, and then they had a daughter between the two of them, and obviously they weren't treated that way. And I'm kind of downplaying everything. Some of the things. Um, I don't know. When I tell people, it doesn't sound that bad to me, but I've sat in depth conversations with, friends of mine and people that are close to me, and they're like, it may not sound bad to you. It's terrible. Would you ever do that to your kids? And I'm like, well, absolutely not. I'd kill somebody if they did that to my kids. But um, yeah, there again, it's just the mental part of it as an adult. I think is far worse than it was as a kid, and I think that led to choices I made later on to try to mask. You know what I mean? Just thoughts of that. I'm big diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety and all that crap because of it. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
So yeah, I imagine that you probably did suffer from a certain amount of anxiety from that. I know what that anxiety is like. It's, when you try to explain it to somebody, sometimes they don't understand, but it's the anxiety and the PTSD. So the PTSD is the anxiety
Yeah.
that you get when a certain situation creeps up that is similar to something that you've experienced before, or like, what the outcome's going to be or what's coming. And that's that anxiety, which is kind of the PTSD of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean, even, sorry, go ahead.
no, go for it.
Even, she would, my dad would go to bed fairly early because he would get up so early, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And she would put me to bed when he went to bed. And then as soon as he would pass out, she'd get me out of bed. She'd get me out of bed and make me just stand for hours on end. And I remember, if my memory serves me right, that Jay Leno would come on at 11 p.m. and then it would come back on. I think at like 1 or 2 a.m. It would rerun, and I would stand there. I don't know, from 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock until 1 or 2 in the morning. Then she'd put me in bed for a few hours, get me back up. So I would often fall asleep in my room, and again, I had to sit in the same spot in the middle of the room to the point where I could feel where my legs and my butt, the imprint, were for so many years. Well, I would sneak in the corner next to. I had a bed and a dresser in my room. That was it. I wasn't allowed to have things hanging on the wall or anything. But I would fall asleep, and I could hear the carpet move, and I would sleep so lightly that I knew to assume the position, I guess, jump back in that spot and sit there. And that's affected me now to where I haven't had a good night's sleep in I don't know how many decades now, because I hear any little sound in the house and I'm awake because of that. You know what I mean? My brain is still in that mode from when I was, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, whatever it was. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the thing. Again, I keep stressing it, like, as an adult, it's so much worse. So if someone's, obviously abusing children is terrible, but the person they're going to become, that's the monster. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's the way I look at it, I guess.
Yeah, that's it's always, well, it's not always, but I mean, a lot of the people that I've talked to, and I've talked to other folks that have been in situations like this, and it's the step parents, usually for the girls, it's the stepfather
Right.
that touched them inappropriately, or did inappropriate stuff. Oh, and with the boys, it was the stepmother, and in some cases it was inappropriate, but a lot of cases it was just the physical abuse, and whatever bad day they were going through got taken out
Right.
on the step kid, which is horrible.
I think it was her bad life. It got completely, it was every single day. That's another thing I can't stress. Even if it was just, the things she would say. I grew up thinking my dad wasn't my dad, to the point where, again, as an adult, I've questioned, you know, 4 of my 5 kids. The oldest one isn't mine. I adopted him, but every aspect of my life has come back to things that she said and done. And she was so good at manipulating people. I tell people, she told you your name was Sean, you better check your driver's license, because she can convince you anything. Like,
Oh,
if she told you the sky was purple, you probably would believe her. And I don't know exactly what she went through growing up. And I haven't talked to my dad in 21 years. Children's Services, I finally spoke out. Um, she attacked me with a pair of scissors, um, and cut my hands up. And in the process, she was chasing me down, and I shut a door behind me to stop her, and she jammed the scissors in the door jamb and destroyed the door jamb. So now I have evidence, and
yeah,
I was 13, so I said something. I think my mom, Children's Services had been there so many times where I had said a few things to my mom, or the few times she had left marks from hitting me. And I would always tell, no, 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 nothing's going on, because I knew when they left, things were just going to get worse. But this one time, um, I finally just broke down and told the lady, I was like, look around you. You can just look around you and see something's not right here. And it was in March of what would have been 2002, I think. Yeah, 2001, 2002. Yeah, 2002. No, it was 21 years ago, in this month. And I haven't seen my dad a day since. I've reached out to him, and I still have this weird hold. A lot of things. I closed a lot of chapters and I've got a lot of things situated as far as some stuff in the past, but for whatever reason, I can't let go of just seeing my dad, talking to my dad, and everyone's like, he has to accept responsibility for what he allowed to happen if he has anything to do with you, and he doesn't want to accept responsibility. Just acknowledging you is accepting responsibility, I think, you know. So, but the worst thing too here, and I talked to his family. It was my stepmom would always tell me that if I ever moved in with my mother, my dad, even if he was on his deathbed, would never want anything to do with me. And I would tell my mom that, and she'd go, "Your dad loves you. He would never do that to you." Because she would always say, "Why don't you just move in with me?" And I always said, "Well, I don't want to lose my dad." I never wanted to disappoint my father, and I always felt like if I told him what was going on, I would disappoint him. Um, and it got to the point where I just didn't care anymore. Like I said, I finally told that lady, but um, about 2 years after I was living with my mom, a year or 2 years, she looked at me. She said, he wasn't lying, you know." And now it's 21 years later. But anyhow, it took me about 8 or 9 years to reach out to his side of my family because she had me so convinced, even in my 20s, that, you know, if he didn't want anything to do with me, for sure they don't want anything to do with me. But they were
Yeah.
ecstatic to hear from me. I finally got in touch with them. And I hate that even now, all these years later, it still gets brought up. And the one thing I always hate hearing is we always knew something was going on. To hear an
Yeah.
adult tell you that, and my entire childhood was ruined. I barely stepped foot outside unless I was hitting the bus or going out on recess. Like, she took so much from me. And to hear another adult say, "We always knew something was going on." Well, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you do something? I wouldn't be where I'm at now if not all of it didn't happen. So I feel like part of me feels like the old cliche, everything happens for a reason or whatever. This is a simulation. Everything's there. Like, I kind of believe all that, but um, I hate to hear that. The thing I hate more than anything is to hear we always knew something was going on. So I don't
So
know.
a question that I have is, when you were younger, did you, some kids that were, or that, grew up being abused, they had those signs, like they would wet the bed, or, they would do things like that, that were sort of like telltale signs that something's going on, right? Um, was there any of that, or was it just,
I Man, I was so scared to wet the bed at my dad's. I don't think I ever did, but I know at my mom's I did. Um, I think when they refer to that, like signs, I was just always locked in that room.
Mhm.
I was never around it. It literally, I mean, they locked me in the room. I was locked in a bedroom. I tell people for 10 years of my life I spent in a cell basically. Um, but yeah, I don't, not that I recall. I was a hyper kid. Uh, when I see my sons, and they had drugged me so bad. Again, she was manipulative, so she convinced these doctors that I was just a terror. And I think back, like, I probably was hyper. I mean, I was suppressed in this room all day long. I got a
Yeah,
little
right.
energy. I mean, I'm pent up. And then I see my sons now, and I get glimpses of what I could have been like, and I would never put them on. They're just kids. They're being kids. And I mean, I was on adult doses of, you know, I was like one of the first generations of like Ritalin kids, and
Yeah.
boy, they took advantage of it. They would isolate me in the classrooms, when they have like their sit down times. They would put me in a chair while everyone was sitting on the floor because I would nod out, like a junkie or something. Um, and I have hormone issues because of that even to this day. Like, little things like that have just trickled all the way down. I guess, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, back to your original question. I don't think there were any signs like that.
Yeah.
Not that I recall, but
Yeah. That's, man, the Ritalin, all of that stuff.
oof,
I never got put on that, but I was a disruptive kid, and what kid isn't hyper? Like, my
right.
daughter, she runs around, and that's just part of what they do. They like to push the lines. They like to
Hmm.
test to see how far they can get. They want
Yeah.
to. A lot of times they're just playing around. And they think it's funny, and they don't know any better.
Right.
And it's just part of being a kid. I know
Yeah.
that doping them up on stuff isn't the answer. Take them to
Right.
the park. Take your
Right.
kids to the
Right.
park and let them run around. Let them run it off.
Right. And on rare
Don't.
occasions, I was like allowed out of the room to watch TV or whatever. I couldn't sit
Yeah.
on the couch because I moved too much. Again, I mean, I can spread out a little bit. I have some freedom, you know. I'm a kid, so if I move, shift my leg or whatever, my sisters would complain. And it's like, back in your room. So I don't know, man.
All right, well,
But
let's shift a little bit, move a little bit ahead there. Sorry
okay,
that happened to you, man. That sucks. And you know, trying to heal from those kind of traumas can oftentimes be very difficult and cause, you know, dysfunctional behavior as an adult.
yeah.
And you know, obviously, you said that you've experienced some of that. What you had a situation where you fell in love and got married to your high school sweetheart? Or
No,
something like, or, you know, new in high
yeah.
school?
I had moved in with my mom. The short version, when I was 13. At 15, she went to a psychiatric ward. So I was left with my stepfather, who was a drunk. In hindsight, he really was a great man. I picked up a lot of his mannerisms. I'd love to get in touch with him again one day. But he was a drunk who just didn't know how to raise kids. He never had kids on his own. So I was out on the street when I was 15. I lived with a friend of mine, and I got my
So back
diploma at 15.
so back up. What did that look like? So you say
What's
you were
that?
out on that you were out on the street. I mean, did he say get
Oh, well,
out?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, your mom's gone, and I'm not going to deal with you. And I'll admit, when I went to my mom's, I went from having zero freedom to having all the freedom. So you know, I'm out running around, and I was never like the drug and drinking kid. So they didn't really ever have to worry about that. I was the one telling everybody like, we shouldn't be drinking right now, and all my teenage friends were like, shut the hell up if you're not, you know what I mean? Get out of here. But I never liked stimulants, which is funny how it plays later on in my life. But yeah, you got to go. Pack your shit. You got to get out. I'm selling the house and I'm moving to Florida. You know, your mom's gone. We're divorcing. He couldn't handle. My mom's a bipolar schizophrenic to the extreme, and he couldn't handle that. That's originally how my father got custody of me. It's hard for a father in Franklin County, Ohio, to get custody over mom unless something's really wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, at 15, I went and moved in with a friend of mine. I got my high school diploma, and then I started a full-time job. And then when I was 17, I started changing oil at a place, met a guy and needed a place to stay, moved in with him and met his sister. And I was 17 at the time and she was 21. And that was my first love. I mean, I'd never really experienced, I barely kissed a girl at that point. So, yeah, she was dating someone at the time, and he started abusing drugs, and she was trying to get away from him. I guess I was kind of like her fling. I was younger than her, and you know, I was a virgin. She took my virginity, so but I didn't want to lose her. I didn't know how to have a relationship at that point. And I tried to get her pregnant, and she had been with this guy for a few years, and they were never able to have kids, and she ended up pregnant. Well, we knew there was a chance that, like, I was so sure. I'm like, I've never done drugs or drank, and I'm young, and you know, I'm in decent shape. Like, it's got to be my kid. I tried to get you pregnant stupidly. Like, thinking back now, like, what a not only irresponsible, but what a selfish, just shithead move. You know what I mean? But I was 17. I was
Yeah.
an idiot.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, I told her, I was like, you know, I'll take care of the baby no matter what. And we went through some stuff for a while she was pregnant, and eventually we ended up back together. She was pretty convinced, like, yeah, it almost has to be your kid. But um, yeah, the day at the hospital he was born, he's like almost half Jamaican. So it's pretty obvious when he was born that he wasn't mine. But I mean, I still adopted him and took him in. You know, that his biological father was in no position to take care of a kid, and neither, frankly, like in hindsight, neither was I. 17. But I guess the lesser of two evils. You know, at least I was present, and you know, I was just head over heels in love with this woman. I didn't know anyone else, or you know, she was giving me the attention I'd never had from anyone. And we ended up having two more kids. We had a daughter a year later, and then 2 years after that, we had my son. So, but yeah, so it wasn't a high school sweetheart, but I guess you can consider it that.
Yeah. Well, good on you, man, for you know, stepping up and, you know, taking care of that kid. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of guys, you know, may have went the other route and said, you know, well, screw that. It's not my kid. I don't have, I'm not responsible for it.
Right. I think the realization was I tried to get you pregnant. Again, shithead move. So I gotta step up now. Actually, the day he was born, at this point, my mom was getting her health back, and I was headed to the elevator to leave. I was ready to book it, man. And her mom was crying in the hallway, and I'm hitting the button, looking around. She's like, "You better not leave. You better not leave." And I'm like, "I'm not." In my mind, I was already packing the car, getting out of Dodge. And my mom stepped off the elevator. She's like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "Man, he's not mine, Mom." She was like, you made a promise to that girl, and you're a better person than that." She's like, "Well, let's just go check it out." And if it wasn't for my mom stepping off the elevator, like, I don't know, my life would be completely different, I'm sure. You know, so
Yeah.
just little things like that stick out.
All right, and so let's progress a little bit more forward.
Yeah.
And you ended up doing some time, got wrapped up in
Right.
drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I never liked narcotics. I was always scared to take anything. I didn't like that outside of myself feeling. I didn't like that stimulant feeling. I think I had had enough of that as a kid, to know that and actually I had an accident, when I was 15. I almost lost my right leg, and they gave me morphine in the hospital, put me in cardiac arrest. So I didn't like drugs and alcohol up until that point, and that really just you know, sealed it for me right there. So anyhow, I was carrying a television, the old CRT televisions, the big heavy ones, down the steps, and thought I was on the last step, was on the second to last, and broke my ankle. And in the hospital, I have the band, the red band, no narcotics. Like, I was up front, I don't want narcotics, I don't want that. And the doctor came in and convinced me, man. He was like, "Are you sure? Like, we can give you something, and you're in the right spot. You're in the right place. If you have any adverse reactions, there's things we can do to take care of that." And I thought it over and thought it over, and I said, "Okay, I'll try it." And he gave me a Vicodin, and that's all she wrote, man. I panicked when I took it, and when that thing kicked in, it was like my brain moves 1,000 miles an hour as it is. It was almost like my brain fogged up in a good way, if that makes any sense. Like,
Mhm.
everything just relaxed, and I didn't know anything about opiate addiction. I was ignorant to all that, and so I took the script home and I abused them. Unbeknownst to me, I was abusing them. I didn't realize what I was doing. And then I didn't have them when I was sick. I'm going through withdrawals. And I tell people, like, you could cut my finger off and I wouldn't complain as much as if I had a cold. So going through opiate withdrawals was like, just kill me, man. I couldn't take it. And I didn't know what it was. And a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you're dope sick." And I was like, I don't do heroin. Like, what are you talking? He's like, "No, no, no." He's like, "Here, take this. Tell me if you feel better in 20 minutes." He gave me a Vicodin. I felt better. And I was off to the races, man. It
Yeah.
was My ex and I were going through a lot of stuff at the time, and that just took everything away. It took all the shit that I went through as a kid away. It took everything I was going through with her away. It put those blinders up. I don't know if you have any experience with opiates, but that's what they do for me. You know what I mean? They made everything better. And it went from that, classic story, man. Went from the doctor gave me the first Vicodin to Percocets to Perc 30s, and then snorting Perc 30s, and then in the midst, actually before all that happened, is when ironically enough, I picked up a burglary charge. Um, and then with the pressure of the burglary charge and all that, that's kind of when everything started to fall into place with the opiates. After that, believe it or not, again, fast forward even more, went from Perc 30s to um, was China White heroin that you snort. So I was like, "Oh, I'll never do heroin." And he was like, "Oh, no, no, it was just fentanyl is what it was." And now this is 15 years ago, 16, 17 years ago. And before fentanyl is what it is now. And so I'm snorting this China White, and then you can't find that anymore. So then there's tar heroin. I'm like, "Oh, what am I going to do? I can't afford these Percocets." My buddy's like, "I'll just mud puddle and snort the heroin." And I went from snorting the heroin to smoking the heroin, and then from smoking the heroin to shooting it up. Again, just classic story. And then um yeah, thankfully, I knew that I told people, if it's not the mental part that's getting me, it's the physical. And if I can get over this, like, I'll never look back. So I knew not to burn any bridges. So I never did the robbing and the stealing and all that stuff. And yeah, I went into hiding. I ended up, my ex and I, she couldn't take it anymore. I don't blame her. It just, I was draining money. I was working and I was sustaining the habit, but that's all I was doing, $150, $200 a day. I was smoking it at the time. So, and literally all my paychecks, I've always made pretty good money as a truck driver, and all my money was just going to that, man. Every penny. So we split up, and then the job didn't last after that. So I ended up in one of the worst spots in Columbus called the Bottoms. It's on the west, like almost downtown, the west side of downtown, and abandoned houses. Living in the basements of abandoned houses, building fires to stay warm, and again, I never burned any bridges because I knew that when you have a homeless people, you get to see this community, and they're like, you don't belong here. I'm like, yeah, no shit. I don't plan on being here 5 years from now, and I'm lucky, you know what I mean? Because some people are still there. I still see some of the people from 10 or 15 years ago that I was down there with. I still see them like panhandling and stuff, and thankfully I never had to do that. I always, with the CDL, I always was able, even if I worked at a job for a week, there were always jobs where I could work for a week, get that week paycheck, and then go do my thing. But yeah, so, and then on top of that, I ended up with the probation from the burglary because I was just a whole mess. And after 12 dirty drops, he was like, I had 7 or 8 years on the table, and I got lucky the first time, and I did 4.5 months in, I guess would be our county. It was kind of like county, they call it the workhouse here in Columbus, and they sent me to like a low security community-based correctional facility, and that really helped me out. I did 4.5 months in there too, and things got way better after that. I took it serious. Basically, I went through this period of a total of 3 years on opiates. 9 months of that was on heroin, and then I got clean, and I haven't used anything since February of 2014. So I'm lucky that a lot of people out here relapse and relapse and relapse and relapse, and some of them get clean and some of them don't. And I'm lucky enough that it really was just the physical withdrawals. Once I was over those, I was like, that was enough for me. I don't ever want to go through that ever again. So I was sick for 39 days in jail, man. It was hell. But
okay. So to answer your question, yeah, I do have experience with opiate addiction. I went from 18-year methamphetamine habit or addiction to right into a pain pill addiction. Same thing with you, and that lasted for about 7 years.
oh wow,
And yeah, and they knew in my charts that I was an addict already from the meth and all that other stuff, and they still gave me the pain pills, but they made
oh
me
wow,
they made me sign that I wouldn't come after them. Basically just saying, yeah, you're not going to come after us for giving you these. And so yeah, it ended up happening,
wow,
and yeah, I got to a point where I was buying like $500 more extra a month, which isn't a lot considering what they were, but yeah, those were tough to get off of. What I
yeah,
ended up doing is I think it's about 6 months before, or maybe six to almost a year before the podcast, I knew when I started that, and that was in May of 2000. It was 2 years ago, so it was May of 2019, I believe. 1920, yeah. And
yeah,
so I knew that if I was going to do this podcast, that there's no way that I could be on pills or anything, because how in the world can I talk about nowhere to go but up while I'm still getting
right,
120 perks, sometimes taking them, sometimes not, doing, you can imagine what I was doing with the rest of them.
right,
And so I did, I stopped. And what I ended up doing is I just weaned down, took half
anymore, but it just calms my brain down the same way that the opiates did without the stimulating effect, if that makes any sense. So I use that for the PTSD and the anxiety. Actually, I have Tourette syndrome, and that helps with that a lot too. I have fits a couple times a month where my wife, she can see it. It just tortures me. But Kratom, man, just a gram a day has really, really, really changed a lot for me as well. I've been using that for about 3 years now, thanks to that podcast.
Yeah.
Listening to him on it. I don't know if you've heard that one or not, but he talks about the receptors that it hits.
Yeah, I'm sure I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I microdose THC daily, so
Oh,
I
really?
eat. Yeah, I make my own chocolate, and I'll just, I know what my dosage is, and I know, what to take to not, get to where I don't want to go. Because
Yeah.
I don't know, for anybody out there that doesn't know, and you probably heard me talking about this plenty, but if you haven't, uh, there's nothing fun about taking too much edible marijuana, because
No.
the high that you go to is not a fun place. It's usually
That's it.
full of it's usually full of anxiety, and like, oh my god, am I
Yeah, I can't
gonna
do
die?
THC at all. I like CBD, but I tell them if it has any THC, I'm gonna tear my house apart because I cannot handle THC at all. Which is the opposite of my mom. I think she's used enough THC for the next 4 generations of my family. That's all she does. But I can't imagine. I bet the way you feel when you eat too much is how I feel just taking one hit off of a joint, man. I just freak the fuck out, man.
Yeah.
I can't take it. It doesn't like me and I don't like it. But
So Alice says, "What is Robert using? I've never heard of it before. It's called kratom, and I think the proper spelling of that is Kratom."
yep. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
plant. It's related to the coffee plant. And simplest terms, it kind of bounces around the same receptors that opiates do, but it doesn't quite lock itself into those receptors. So you get sort of the same effect without any of the detrimental side effects from it. You know, um, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody who has been an addict, or I have heard of people using it to get off Suboxone and methadone, but I'm sure that's like really high doses. So I guess you could say a gram might be considered microdosing it. But do a bunch of research and talk to people before you use it. That's what I always tell people,
Yeah,
especially if you've had addiction issues.
yeah, they used to sell it in the head shops. You go
Yeah,
to.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, there's a little bit of a lag here, so it'll happen. Yeah, so they usually sell it in like the head shops, or I don't know. I don't even know if I can get it around here anymore. Are you there? Oh,
I have no
there
idea
you
what happened. You just disappeared. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
yeah, I got you.
Okay.
Sorry about that, man. It's
That's
like I
okay.
said, this internet is driving me nuts.
No.
I bumped it up to the most expensive one that they have on the whatever it's called, the residential one,
Hmm.
and it's still doing the same thing. So I got to get them out here and run a dedicated line to it,
Yeah.
like one off of the because I'm sharing one. That's a long story.
Yeah.
Either
But
way, it's annoying.
yeah, I would back to the kratom really fast. There's actually kratom stores in Columbus that sells, specifically sell kratom. It's really inexpensive. If you go to some of the head shops, they're like 30, $40 for an ounce. If you go to a kratom store, or even online, there's a couple companies online that are really good. They're $7 an ounce. And that
Wow.
lasts, doing a gram a day. 16 days it lasts. But anyway, yeah.
Well, it's
It,
definitely a lot better than taking pills. So
oh man, yeah. And I hate to even tell people I do it because they're like, oh, well, you replace one addiction with another, and it's that, or I'm going to be, again, I was on adult doses of Zoloft and Ritalin. I'm not taking pharmaceuticals because I'm taking this, you know. So
yeah, at the end of the day, what I would say to people when I go into some of those clubhouse rooms and they have they're talking about addiction and stuff like that. I definitely tell them that it's what works for you,
yeah,
right?
right,
At the end of the day, you're the one that has to deal with your life and your situation and your issues. So if like, because there's always those things in our life, and for me it was meth, that you just can't mess with, right?
yeah,
No matter how many times you do it, how many times you try to do it differently, or at least that I tried to do it differently, it always had the same outcome. Maybe not as quickly, as before, or, but the same thing would always happen. I'd
Right.
lose everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Bottom
you know?
line.
Yeah. And so, I can't mess with that. And I know that. But, through my, going through life and doing different drugs, and, I've done a lot of them. The only one I haven't done is heroin, and maybe I might have done mescaline once, but I mean, heroin was it. And I never slammed uh, any kind of drug, because, I was a better drug addict than that. Those
Yeah.
guys over
I
there
always
that are
said
doing
that.
that,
I
those
always said
guys
the
over
same thing,
there,
man. Yeah.
they're the ones that have the problem.
I tell people, like, if I could use heroin or opiates every day of my life with no detrimental consequences, I would, because they make you feel good. They make you feel amazing. And I mean, why do you kiss your significant other? Like, why do we have sex? It's because you want to feel good,
Yeah.
but you can't, unfortunately. And I have an unpopular opinion. Like, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for other people, but I don't consider myself um, an addict. Once you're an addict, you're always an addict. And I've kept that mindset out of my head because I don't want to use it as a crutch. And I don't feel like I'm an addict. For 9 months of my life, I was using heroin. For like maybe 3 months of that is when I was shooting it up. But that was such a small part of these 33 years I've had on earth. And due to some people, does that define who I am? Yeah, of course it does. And it always will. And there's not shit that I can do. I could run a multi-million-dollar company and they're still going to see me as a junkie. I don't care. I don't have time for those people. I don't care. Um, but for everyone else who knows me, there's a lot of people who out there, again, I disappeared because I was so ashamed. There's a lot of people who wouldn't even believe you now if you told them. Because I was the kid, again, telling everybody, like, don't do that, guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's not good for you. I was also the guy telling everybody not to have kids. And then I had kids at 17 years old. But um, for me, I don't consider myself an addict. And I have, I can drink and not have an issue with it. I just, again, it's such an unpopular opinion. I'm trying to watch what I say, but in my particular case, I can't speak for everybody. It's not who I am. I'm not always going to be an addict. I once had an addiction. I had a problem with addiction, but I'm not going to be an addict the rest of my life, and I'm not going to be defined as that. So I don't know. I
No,
don't know if that's
No, I agree with that. We're if just I mean we're not the same people we were 6 months ago, and
exactly. Yeah.
and if you are, then maybe you might want to take a look at that, because you may not be doing this life thing right.
Yeah.
If you're still
Right.
stuck in
Exactly.
not progressing or not learning, from your mistakes and failing forward. I mean, if you're failing backwards all the time, take a look at that.
Right.
Why is that happening? Because most of us, that are on a path of trying to do better and trying to, progress and not be the same kind of person that we were at one point in our life that made things hard on us or bad, or whatever your situation was, trying to be a better person tomorrow than you were today is the right way to go about it.
Right. Yeah.
And
That's
so
yeah. Completely agree with you. Like you said, even
so
just 6 months ago, man.
yeah, so let's move forward again, and you have another aspect of your life too. So you've gone through
Yeah.
all of that. You're not addicted anymore, and you're not taking the drugs. You're not doing any of that stuff. Uh, your your family dynamic now is actually one that most people might be envious of.
Yeah. I was still very unorganized, I guess is the easiest way to say it when I got out of prison. Um, so it took a few years of me bouncing around and being that person that I was never able to be when I was younger before I met my ex. And went out and had fun and met people, and then I met my wife. And when we got together and things started to get serious, I told her, like, look, you know, my ex and I still have a relationship. We'll never be together again. There's a reason we're not together now. It's for the best. But in order for, us to be together, like you have to accept not only my kids, that's a given, but you have to accept that she's going to be in my life. Um, and you know, my wife and I now, we actually met on a dating website, and we have 2 kids of our own, and we're all just one extended family. We all do things together. You know, we go to their house in Columbus for Christmas, and there's been a few years where my ex and her family have been able to buy more gifts for my current wife and I's kids than we were. You know, so actually tomorrow, my son, my 4-year-old that my wife and I have now, is going to stay with my ex-wife and my kids at her house for a couple of days for his birthday. You know, they take him on his birthday to do stuff. So there's no animosity. And I made that clear from the beginning. There was actually someone was talking to before my wife, and she was so grossed out by that. She was so appalled, and that's weird, and that's not right, and you guys shouldn't be doing that. I said, well, you got to go, you know,
Yeah.
that's the way it is. You know, that's the way it should be. I'm not going to put my kids through. My parents couldn't even be in the same room together. Like if I knew there were parent teacher conferences, that was torture on me, and I'm sure it was torture on them. So not only am I not going to put my kids through that, I'm not going to put myself and my wife and my ex-wife and whoever she's with, I'm not going to put us all through that. And thank God that my wife was on board 100%, and that my ex-wife, you know, it took a little coming around for her, because I kind of was, like I said, I was living out the life that I never had before. So she never knew when I was going to settle down with someone. But when she realized that my wife and I, you know, we got married and had kids, yeah, things are great, man. I can't, you know, we were talking before the show about the self-sabotage. I'm like, when things have been so good for so long, either it's going to fall apart or I'm going to mess it up, man. And thankfully so far it hasn't happened. So
Yeah, I've done a few episodes on self-sabotage. Yeah, I think I've done 2 of them so far. One a year ago and then one just recently. And it's a real thing, man. It
yeah,
definitely is. You know, when you're used to growing up in chaos, you know, the natural, at least for me, is, you know, I do really, 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 really well. And it's just like, no, it's like, I don't, it's like I'm waiting for I'm just like, okay, when's
right.
it all gonna, you know,
Yep.
when am I gonna screw it up?
Yep.
And sometimes it was like, all right, well, I didn't wait for it. I just made it happen.
Yeah, and if you feel like it's taking too long, you're like, stuff's just too good. It doesn't feel right. I've done
Yeah.
that. I've on multiple occasions, but one I can think in mind is I had a good secure spot. I was living with someone, and um, we were um, we were growing and selling pot. I'll just say that at the time it was kind of on the fence if it was legal or not, and things were just going too good, man. And I felt like I had to justify, like I have to do something to get out of this, and I didn't realize it until hindsight. But yeah, I up and took off with 5 pounds of weed and took it and put it in my car and just drove away with it and pretended like I didn't know what happened with it. And I didn't have anywhere to take it. I didn't. So if you want to say I stole it, I stole it, but that was not my intention. I just things were going too good, things were too stagnant, and when they kept asking why, I'm like, I don't know, you know. And I know it's what it was. It was self-sabotage. Things were just going too good.
Yeah.
I needed to just fuck it up. I hate to say that, man, but
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
unintentional until you look back at it. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's just one of the many cases, you know, where yeah, I don't know. So this is the longest stretch, all right? I think it's
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
about 6 or 7 years now. Things have been going really well, and I hope it stays this way. It feels better than it ever has before, but that fear is still always there, and I don't know if it'll ever go away. I think it's pretty unhealthy to think like that as much as I do, but hopefully it passes.
Yeah. For me too, this is a pretty long stretch that I've had where, you know, I haven't done anything, but you know, the podcast really helps with that.
Oh, I bet.
It helps me to stay accountable. I'm very transparent about all of the things that I struggle with, and you know, the things that I do and I've done, including being an abusive person.
Yeah,
That was a hard one to come out and say, and to actually say that. You know, because you don't want to think of yourself in that light, right? It's
and now if you do it again, there's no excuse because you put it
mhm.
out there. Now you have no excuse. Before you could say,
Yep.
"Oh, I didn't realize what I was doing," but yeah, you do what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's part of the reason. So if I put
Right.
it out there in the universe and I let everybody know about it, then now I have to be accountable
Right.
for my actions and my behavior. And, it's like practice what you preach.
Hmm.
I don't want to be sitting up here saying that I'm, doing this and I'm doing that. And then behind the scenes, it's like I'm this completely different guy.
Right.
I'm pretty much the same. That what you see here is what you see
Yeah.
out there. Maybe a little bit lazier out there, but uh, it, yeah, it's just it works for me, and
Right.
I really enjoy reaching out and talking to different folks and seeing what worked for them, what they did, how they got through whatever it was that they were going through. And, I'm enjoying the ride. Let's just say
Oh, I
that.
bet. I wish more people would. I know you said what works for them. If more people would admit their problems, I think it would help society as a whole. But some people just aren't willing to do it, man. You know.
No, no, you're right. They're not.
So
So we're at about 52 minutes here. We're going to close this out. We
right
got
on.
about an hour. I got a daughter that's on the other side of that door trying to get in. I'm lucky she hasn't been banging on it. She came in here one time and I'm like, go over there, out. But go ahead. If you got any final things or any thoughts that you want to get out that you didn't get a chance to touch on, go ahead and do that now. I'm going to flip up your Instagram handle right there. Oh, that's not yours.
I said that didn't look familiar barefoot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't really have anything to promote, man. Yeah.
there's your Twitter. Damn it. What did I do with that? I must have put the wrong one on there. Ugh.
I think that's
So
my Instagram. I don't know. Whatever she sent you.
no, that's not your Instagram. That's my
Oh,
guest
okay.
from last night's Instagram. So, if you want to find all of the links that I've been, flipping up on here, including Robert's Instagram, which I made a mistake, I'm holding myself accountable. It does happen, and go to the description below, or if you're looking, actually, it's the description above, I believe, if you're on Facebook, and if you're on YouTube, it's the description below. And you'll find all of the direct links to everything that I've been throwing up here, as well as ways to support the show. Whether you want to, leave a review, go to my link tree, all the ways to connect there. All my social media links are there. If you want to buy me a coffee, you can actually do that. There is a app and a link down there where you can buy me a coffee if you feel like I deserve one. If you're getting value out of what I'm producing here and you want to help support that, you can do that as well too. No pressure. I mean, I know we're all kind of in some people aren't working these days and some people are still struggling or trying to get out of that hole that, we all got into at some point from where we were this last year. So no stress, no nothing. Don't worry about it if you can't, but if you can, I'd sure appreciate it. So yeah, you said you didn't have any last words there?
Nah, no, nothing comes to mind, man. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. It was fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great to have you. And like I said, I like connecting with folks. And
Nice.
maybe now, since we've had this conversation, and you see what I'm doing, maybe you'll jump on and become a listener. So
No, I am for sure. I'm looking forward to that. Definitely. Yeah.
yeah, there's tons of content, man. I got about 118. This is 121, but of the published ones onto that platform for the podcast, I think I'm at 119. So there's a lot to listen to there
Well,
or
I
to get
got
through.
plenty of time to binge it throughout the day, being in that truck. So yeah, I was looking forward to getting this out of the way so I can jump into them, man. So yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Awesome, man. Well, you take care and hold on for a second when I close this out with the outro, and then I've got some instructions for you of what to expect coming down once this is all published and
Okay,
everything.
cool.
All right. And for everybody else out there, what we are doing here, we have this is the last one that we're doing for the week. I got a couple maybe lined up next weekend, or actually next weekend, next week. Tomorrow I've got a really, really good interview that I've been waiting for. There's a documentary series that I watch, or not a series, but a documentary that I watch called From JFK to 9/11, Everything's a Rich Man's Trick. And you can find that on YouTube if you just type in exactly what I said. And that was by a guy named Francis Richard Connolly. And I'm going to be talking to him tomorrow and interviewing him. So I'm really excited about that. It's not going to be a live. We're doing it on Skype. So it's what he's used to. So I made an exception. Excuse me. I made an exception because I really want to talk to him. So look forward to that coming out, in a couple of weeks from now. I might replay it as a live stream, just like you're seeing here, but you just won't be able to interact with him or ask him questions. I'll be here, but it will just be playing as a replay. So have a good evening. Have a good weekend. Stay true to yourself and keep it 100. See you later.
You've been listening to the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. Sean is a single dad, a union blue-collar guy, and he spent time in federal and state prison for drug trafficking and fraud. When he was released from prison in 2006, all he had was the clothes on his back, a bag of mail, and some paperwork. Since then, he's turned his life around and shares the struggles and successes on this podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we hope you were moved. To connect to the show, book a guest spot. For merch, Patreon, PayPal, and social media links, go to linktr.ee/nowhere to go but up. On Instagram at Nowhere to Go But Up Now. On Twitter at But Up Now. On the YouTube channel at Nowhere to Go But Up Podcast. See you next time.